All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So today we are going to be looking at the beginning part of Greece. We're going to be looking at the Greeks. Um, then we're going to be looking at basically how their cities were, things like that, for the most part. Um, and then we're going to get into one of the most known battles, wars, you can call it, um, of all time. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that. Then next week in class, we'll be talking about the Spartans and the Athens. So if you've ever seen that movie 300, um, you already have some some knowledge, and I'm going to break down what was true, what was not on that. But be sure to be on class next week for that. Okay, so let's begin. So here are the essential questions. Again, we've gone through this. The objective today, we're going to analyze the history and the term of Trojan horse. Now, some of you guys may have heard that. You may know what it means. If you are into computers, you have heard this term before. The chances are very high that you've heard that before. Um, and then compare and contrast the differences between the Spartans and Athens. Again, that will be next week in class. So be prepared for that one. Oh, darn it. There he is. So, yeah, so today, as you can see where Reptile was shooting at, today we're going to start the rise of the Greeks. All right, we'll eventually get to the fall soon. All right, so there he goes. So here's your warm-up picture. Let me move my camera back. There we go. So if you have the Google Doc, um, make sure again you have it on half the screen and you have this YouTube video on the other half. So when we go through it, you can go right by it and just go side by side. Okay. So the first question is, what do you see? I think I put down name three things. All right. So there are three things you can see on there. Um, and the second question is, what do you think this artist is saying? Basically. So again, if you have no idea what a Trojan horse is, um, just look at this picture and look at what they're saying. And that should kind of give you a hint, a little hint about what a Trojan horse is, especially if it's a good or bad thing type of stuff. But if you do know what it is, you should answer this question with ease. Okay, so go ahead and answer it. We're going to be moving on in three, two, one. All right, so again, usually I don't do this. I don't start off after the warm up with a question, but this is a question I want to know because it kind of leads into the notes. How far would you go to help out one of your siblings to get something back? All right, think about that. How far would you go? If someone took your little brother's, bike, how far would you go? Would you beat up the person who took it, or would you just take it back? Would you be like, well, you should have took care of your stuff, um, things like that. What would you do? How far would you go to help out one of your siblings to get something back? Okay, so go ahead, answer the question. Pause the video if you're not done, but we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. Now the Mycenae, it was one of the biggest centers of the Greek civilization. It was a major hub, a place where people came to for like 500 years. It was like where the top philosophers, the best temples, and things like that were. It was located on top of a hill and surrounded itself with, I mean, tall walls. At that time, it was like, whoa, these are amazingly tall walls. Nowadays, we'd be like, well, that's not that bad of a size, But back then, they're like, oh my God, how do they get these things so big and how they get them, up. So it was kind of like a marvel at that time. The monarchs in different centers had loose alliance with the independent states. right? So they kind of are together, but it's not like we're together. It's like, dude, if you backstab me, man, but we have the same goals, same common interests, same common enemies. So we're cool, but you try something, we're gonna go at it, type of thing. Um, the most known military venture that came from the Mycenaeans came from a poem from Homer. Now, when I mean Homer, I don't mean like The Simpsons. Oh, Homer. I'm talking about the actual poet, Homer. He wrote two epic poems, Iliad and the Odyssey. Iliad's about the Trojan War, and the Odyssey, which is one of my all-time favorite books, is about an adventure after the war. Um, it's very long, but it's an amazing story if you ever get to chance to read it. Another thing about Homer, which is that's him right there, the statue. He was believed to be blind. So people are like, how does this dude write such great stuff? And he was like probably blind, you know. So yeah, so it was pretty interesting. Now what happened is this: in his books, the war was between Paris. Now he was a prince of Troy, and he kidnapped Helen, who was the wife of the king of Sparta. Now the thing is, how the story goes, that Paris and Helen kind of like caught eyes and this and that, and Paris is like, dude, I gotta have her. She's got to be my wife. So he kidnaps her. Now the king of Sparta convinces his brother, the king of Mycenae, to basically try to go get her. So he's like, dude, you got to help me get my wife back. He's like, brother, I got you. So not only did they take a bunch of soldiers, they took some Greek heroes. One of the most famous ones was this guy named Achilles. All right. Odysseus, Nestor, and Ajax went, but Achilles was like the top dude. Okay. Um, Now again, you can see how wait, how did these Greek heroes, and I know that name Achilles, that sounds familiar. So if you ever hurt your behind your ankle, there's a part in your foot called the Achilles heel, and it's named after him because of what happens to him. He's a Greek god, and of course these Greek gods did not fight, you know, in there, but the story goes that they did. Okay, now Paris upset basically all the Greek people, and they sent a bunch of ships. Those are known fleets, and supposedly it was more than 1,000 ships just going through the sea to go get her. So they were on their way to Troy. Okay, um, the fighting lasted for 10 years. So imagine these people in Troy are, in their town walls, this and that, and the Mycenaeans, the Greeks, Spartans, they're all trying to bust in there, and they can't. So one morning, the Greek armies basically leaves, but they leave behind a giant wooden horse. Right? Now the thing is, the people of Troy are like, hey, these guys lost, so they left this thing for us, like a little victory thing. So they took it in, and that night they're partying, like, hey, 10 years of fighting. They're like, woo, I'm gonna enjoy myself, I'm gonna relax. So that's what happened, and a lot of these guys were not, ready to fight, things like that. And that night, when everyone's had their fun and they're exhausted and tired from partying so much, the horse opens up and a bunch of soldiers drop down, right? And what happens is um, a bunch of them go to the door, open it up, and there comes the Greek warriors and led by Odysseus, and they're just storming in, and they just start killing the the people of Troy. Okay. Now the thing is, why people are like, wait, this probably didn't happen, was because the what happened at Troy happened 400 years before the book was written, before Homer actually wrote the book. The Battle of Troy was 400 years in the past. So it's like someone writing a story about, you know, like I don't know, like Christopher Columbus, you know, now talking about his story and how he came, as if they were just there. It's like, wait, no, they weren't there. That was 400 some years ago. So that's the thing. Um, that was interesting about that. All right, so I was gonna play a video, but the thing's not letting me, so I'm just gonna skip it. Wait, oh man, this thing is. I was trying to take me to it. So what happens is there's this place called Polis. It's a city-state, and it was a focal point of the Greek society. Now, Polis was a fortified area, as you can see from this picture. All right, it's it was called Acropolis, and it was a refuge place for people and a religious gathering place. So if you look at the very, very top of that mountain, those are temples that they would have for the people to go to, pray to the gods, things like that, right? Um, and they had public buildings, where people could stay and things like that. Now, here's the thing. Um, the people in Polis basically had a common identity, right? And because of this, they had common goals. Now, their society was broken up into three groups. One with people with political rights it was just males, adult males. The next one, people without political rights, so women and children. And the last ones were non-citizens, so people who were refugees, who were just basically looking for a place to stay. Their country's in war and they need someone looking for a safe place. Um, those were them. They were agricultural workers, slaves, people who were left the country and wanted to be part of this one. They were considered resident aliens, and they're like, yeah, you can stay here, but you're not one of us. You have no say so in here because you're not born from here. You're not one of us, really. So yeah, you can stay here, but yeah, you're not one of us. Your voice means nothing here. All right, so here's one of the two questions for you. What would be an advantage to living on top of a mountain? So, like that picture you saw of that town, what would be an advantage to having your town on top of a mountain? Right? Now, again, think back then, not now, where now there's like roads and this and that, very smooth, cars. No, think back then with horses, carriages, things like that. Not even carriages, just wagons, if they're lucky. Um, so think like that. Also, the second one, what's more important to you? Being physically strong or being smart? Which one's more important to you and why? Okay, so there's a writing prompt for each one. So go ahead and write that out. Go ahead, I'll pause the video. Well, so usually I should pause the video and write it out. Um, I'm going to continue on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's the thing. The Greeks had two forms of government. One was democracy and one was oligarchy. Now, their two biggest empires uh, had each one had their own one. So, democracy, it comes from the Latin word demo kratia, and demo means the people, and kratia means to rule. So the people rule. Okay. Um, and oligarchy, and that means it's a government that's run by a few people, right? Not all the people, just a select few. Okay. Um, the Athens, the people with the owl as their symbol, they were a democratic form of government, whereas the Spartans, they were an oligarchy. Okay, and they have that upside down V as their symbol. Okay, So if you ever see a painting or a picture with the V, thing upside down looking like a V, um, you should know that that person got it wrong. All right, it's not, doesn't look like a V, it's an upside down V. Okay, like an A without the stripe. Okay, and like I said, in class uh, next week, we are going to be going over both of these groups. Okay, now you have your exit ticket. So tell me something you learned today. All right, what's something new you learned? Um, maybe you learned something about yourself. Like I asked you about your own siblings. Did you think about it and go, I learned something about myself today? How far would I gone? You know, for my siblings, older brother, older sister, younger brother, younger sister, things like that. How far would you have gone? So if you have some type of self-reflection, that's awesome, and that's be a good answer. But other than that, tell me something. Also, like I said, if you um, find, I wish he would explain something more. I wish Martinez would, slow down. I wish he would put more pictures, more videos, whatever. Let me know. Okay. Like I said, I tried to put a video, but it wasn't working as you saw, a couple minutes later, it pops up. So it's like, no. Okay. So, um, other than that, that's it for this lesson. Okay. I hope you guys have a good day. Please take care of yourselves and your families. All right. And I'll see you guys in class.